Have you ever wondered what key moments ignited the American Civil War? This monumental conflict was not just a chapter in the annals of American history, it was a fiery crucible that shaped the United States and continues to influence our nation today. Our journey takes us back to a time of deep division and profound change as we explore the 12 pivotal moments leading up to the war. These are not mere footnotes, but major turning points, each one a spark igniting the fuse that led to the explosion of the Civil War. From the Compromise of 1850 to the election of Abraham Lincoln, we'll delve into these events, peeling back the layers of history to reveal the complex and compelling story beneath. As we embark on this exploration, remember, the American Civil War wasn't sparked overnight, but by a series of events that we will unfold. The first key moment takes us back to the year 1850. A tumultuous time in American history, the nation was in the grip of a fierce debate over the expansion of slavery into newly admitted states. Enter the Compromise of 1850, a series of 5 legislative measures designed to defuse the situation. These laws aim to balance the scales between the free North and the slave-holding South. California was admitted as a free state, while the territories of Utah and New Mexico were given the choice to decide on slavery through popular sovereignty. The compromise also involved overhauling the Fugitive Slave Act and the abolition of slave trade in the nation's capital. However, the Compromise of 1850 was a double-edged sword. While it momentarily quelled the sectional discord, it also amplified the moral question of slavery, causing tensions to escalate significantly over the next decade. Thus, the Compromise of 1850 set the stage for a decade of rising tensions. Next, we delve into the controversial Fugitive Slave Act. This piece of legislation, passed in 1850, was part of the Compromise of the same year. It was designed to pacify Southern slaveholders by forcing all citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves. It even denied those accused of being runaways any right to a trial. This act, however, had the opposite effect of its intent. It further inflamed passions in the North against slavery. It turned the issue from a distant problem into a local one, as Northern states were now directly involved in the institution of slavery. The act also sparked a surge in the activities of the Underground Railroad, a network that helped slaves escape to freedom. The Fugitive Slave Act, in essence, increased tension and hostility between the North and South. It was a piece of the growing division that would eventually lead to the outbreak of the Civil War. The Fugitive Slave Act was a critical moment that further drove the wedge between North and South. Moving on, we witnessed the violent confrontations of Bleeding Kansas. This period, spanning from 1854 to 1861, was a microcosm of the national conflict over slavery. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 opened new territories for settlement, and more importantly, it allowed settlers to decide whether to allow slavery. This resulted in a rush of both pro- and anti-slavery settlers into Kansas, leading to tense and often violent clashes. As the name suggests, Bleeding Kansas was a bloody and brutal chapter in American history. It was a battleground where the ideological struggle over slavery was fought not with words, but with bullets and blood. The violence of this period shocked the nation and further deepened the divide between the North and the South. It was a stark reminder of the lengths people were willing to go to defend their beliefs and way of life. Bleeding Kansas was a chilling prelude to the violence that was to come. Now, let's turn our attention to a landmark Supreme Court decision, the Dred Scott case. In the year 1857, a slave named Dred Scott, who had lived in free states and territories, filed a lawsuit for his freedom. The Supreme Court ruled against Scott, stating that African Americans were not and could never be citizens of the United States, so they couldn't sue in federal court. This decision sent shockwaves through the nation. It was a clear message that the highest court in the land viewed African Americans as property rather than people. The ruling also nullified the Missouri Compromise, which had kept a fragile balance between slave and free states for almost 30 years. The Dred Scott decision did more than deny one man his freedom. It pushed the country closer to the brink of civil war. It stoked the flames of abolitionist fervor in the North, while the South felt vindicated in their views on slavery. The Dred Scott decision was a stark reminder of the deep divisions within the nation. The sixth key moment brings us to John Brown's infamous raid. In the autumn of 1859, abolitionist John Brown led a group of 21 men in a daring attack on the federal armory at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. His goal? To seize the weapons stored there and incite a slave revolt across the South. But the raid didn't go as planned. Brown and his men were quickly surrounded by local militias and a contingent of U.S. Marines led by none other than Robert E. Lee. After a 2-day standoff, Brown was captured and later hanged for treason. While the raid was a failure in practical terms, its symbolic impact was immense. It struck fear into the hearts of Southerners, who saw it as proof that Northerners were willing to use force to end slavery. It also galvanized abolitionists in the North, making them more determined than ever to take a stand against the institution of slavery. John Brown's raid was a clear indication that the nation was on the brink of war. Next, the election of a certain individual changed the course of history. In the fall of 1860, Abraham Lincoln, a lawyer from Illinois with a reputation for his eloquence and anti-slavery stance, was elected as the President of the United States. This election was a significant turning point, as Lincoln was the first Republican president. The Republican Party was relatively new, and its platform was explicitly against the expansion of slavery into the territories. The Southern states, where slavery was an integral part of the economy and social structure, saw Lincoln's election as a direct threat. Fearing the abolition of slavery, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union before Lincoln even took office. These events marked the beginning of a dark chapter in American history, the Civil War. The election of Lincoln was not merely a political shift. It was a seismic event that ruptured the fragile balance between the North and South. The election of Lincoln was the final straw, pushing the nation into war. With the stage set, the nation plunged into war. The Civil War, a defining period in American history, was a series of battles, each significant and contributing to the final outcome. Let's journey through these key military confrontations, understanding their significance and outcomes. First, we set foot in Fort Sumter, South Carolina in April of 1861. This is where the first shots of the Civil War were fired, marking the start of a 4-year-long struggle. The Confederate victory here set the tone for the war in its early stages. The following month, in May, we find ourselves in Virginia for the Battle of Bull Run, also known as the First Battle of Manassas. The Confederates won this battle too, shattering the Union's hope of a swift victory. This battle showed both sides that the war would not be a short or easy one. Fast forward to April of 1862, the Battle of Shiloh in Tennessee. One of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, it ended in a strategic victory for the Union, thanks to General Ulysses S. Grant's tenacity. Shiloh broke the Confederate stronghold in the Mississippi Valley, a vital strategic victory for the Union. Next, in September of the same year, we witnessed the Battle of Antietam in Maryland, the bloodiest single-day battle in American history. While technically a draw, it proved to be a strategic Union victory, providing President Lincoln the confidence to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. Moving into July of 1863, we visit Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, for the most famous battle of the Civil War. The Battle of Gettysburg marked a turning point, with the Union Army successfully repelling a second Confederate invasion of the North. It was in this context that President Lincoln would later deliver his famous Gettysburg Address. In the same month, we see the Union's victory in the Siege of Vicksburg, a strategic win that gave the Union control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. Lastly, we arrive at the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia in April of 1865. This is where General Robert E. Lee, leader of the Confederate Army, surrendered to General Grant, marking the end of the Civil War. The Union's victory here not only ended the war, but also symbolized the preservation of the United States as one nation, indivisible. Every battle in the Civil War was a struggle, a clash of ideologies, and a fight for the soul of a nation. Each battle, victory, or defeat brought the nation one step closer to resolving a conflict that threatened to tear it apart. The Civil War was a testament to the resilience of the American spirit, a spirit that continues to shape the nation to this day. Each battle was a step towards the inevitable end. Amidst the chaos, a beacon of hope emerged. On September 22, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a presidential order that forever changed the trajectory of the Civil War and the nation. The proclamation declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory would be set free, a move that fundamentally shifted the war's goal from preserving the Union to abolishing slavery. This transformative decree not only declared freedom for the enslaved, but also allowed African Americans to serve in the Union Army and Navy, providing a significant boost to the Union's manpower. However, it's important to remember that the proclamation didn't end slavery outright. That monumental task would be accomplished with the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. The Emancipation Proclamation was more than just a military strategy. It signified a moral commitment to the cause of freedom, irreversibly binding the fate of slavery to the outcome of the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation marked a turning point in the war. Now, we delve into a speech that echoed across the nation and the ages. The Gettysburg Address, a mere 272 words delivered by President Abraham Lincoln in November of 1863, has become one of the most iconic speeches in American history. Delivered 4.5 months after the Union armies defeated those of the Confederacy at the Battle of Gettysburg, it was a powerful assertion of the war's purpose. Lincoln used this opportunity not just to commemorate the brave men who had fallen, but also to redefine the Civil War as a struggle not merely for the Union, but as a new birth of freedom that would bring true equality to all of its citizens, and that would also create a unified nation in which states' rights were no longer a volatile issue. The Gettysburg Address was a rallying cry for a nation divided. Its words still resonate today, a testament to the enduring ideals of democracy and the strength of a nation under trial. Finally, we come to a moment that marked the end of the bloodshed. The surrender at Appomattox, on April 9, 1865, was not just another event in the annals of American history. It was the full stop to the tumultuous narrative of the Civil War. Here, Confederate General Robert E. Lee, in all his stately dignity, handed over his sword to Union General Ulysses S. Grant. This act was significant for a multitude of reasons. Primarily, it signaled the end of a war that had torn the country apart, leaving over 600,000 soldiers dead. Moreover, it marked the beginning of a new era, where the United States would strive towards unity and equality as a single, undivided nation. The surrender at Appomattox was more than just a military capitulation. It was a symbolic gesture, highlighting the triumph of unity over division and the resilience of the American spirit. The surrender at Appomattox was the final chapter in a brutal and transformative period in American history. But what happened after the guns fell silent? With the surrender at Appomattox, the Civil War had come to a close. But the end of the fighting did not mean the end of the struggle. As the smoke cleared, the United States was left with a monumental task: healing the wounds of a divided nation and rebuilding a society torn apart by conflict. This period, known as the Reconstruction era, was a time of significant change and immense challenges. In a nation still reeling from the horrors of war, the process of Reconstruction was fraught with complexities. The newly freed African Americans in particular faced a daunting path towards full citizenship and societal acceptance. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, yes, but it did not automatically guarantee equal rights or protections. The 14th and 15th Amendments, which granted citizenship and voting rights respectively, were crucial steps in this journey. Yet these changes were met with resistance, leading to a turbulent era marked by racial tensions and political strife. In the South, the task of rebuilding was especially arduous. The war had ravaged the region's economy, and the end of slavery meant a complete overhaul of its labor system. The introduction of sharecropping provided a temporary solution, but ultimately perpetuated a cycle of debt and poverty that was hard to break. Meanwhile, the North faced its own set of challenges. Despite emerging victorious, the region had to grapple with the economic cost of the war and the task of reintegrating the Southern states back into the Union. The Reconstruction era was a time of sweeping changes, of radical reforms, of hope and disillusionment. It was a time when the United States had to redefine itself, to rebuild from the ashes of war and to strive towards a more inclusive and equitable society. It was a time of transformation, a time of healing, a time of growth. The end of the Civil War was just the beginning of a new chapter in American history, one that continues to shape the nation to this day.